Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Aysh and in this video I'm just going to be going through 5 piercings that you can hide at work or school, but saying that, please do not get piercings without your parents' permission if you still require it, and obviously don't do anything that's going to get you kicked out. I know what it's like to want to get piercings but also not be allowed them in your educational institution, and that can really suck if you're really into piercings. So I'm going to include that in there. Obviously get your parents' permission and don't get anything that, you know, is going to get ripped out in PE or anything like that. And don't get anything that is more intimate as you are still developing. So the first piercing that I have on my list of piercings that you can hide at work or school is actually pretty obvious. It's quite common nowadays, and I think the fact you can hide it is one of the reasons it is so common, and that piercing is a septum piercing. So if you want to get your septum pierced but need to hide it, the first way you can do it is to get a keeper or a curved barbell put in when you get the piercing. If you don't know what either of those are, I'll put a picture of each of them on screen. A septum keeper is basically just something to keep the hole open. So you put it in and you flip it up and it stays hidden. Like usually you can barely see it when you get it done. So they're really good for hiding your septum piercing. I'd say a keeper is a lot more preferable to a curved barbell because sometimes you can still see the balls of the barbell in your nose, so it's a little more obvious than a septum keeper. But that is one way you can hide your septum piercing. The other way to hide your septum piercing is to get it done with a circular barbell, and that's like the horseshoe type piece of body jewellery. And if you get it done with that, you can flip it up your nose much like the septum keeper. However, with anything you flip up in your septum piercing, you do need to keep it either flipped up or flipped down throughout the healing process. If you keep flipping it up and down, you're going to disrupt the healing process, and it's just going to take longer to heal and you'll irritate your piercing. Obviously, if you're wearing a circular barbell in a healed septum piercing, then you can flip it up and down as much as you want. Just be careful not to irritate it. Another advantage to having a septum piercing is that if you aren't allowed one, but you do get caught with one, even if it's flipped up or something like that, and then you're made either by your school or your work to take it out, the scars usually aren't visible as they're inside your nose. So even though it really sucks that you had to take it out, that just gives you one less thing to worry about. The next piercing on my piercings you can hide list is a belly button piercing or a navel piercing. Now, much like septum piercings, you can hide your navel piercing when you have to, and you can also show it off when you want to. If you do decide to get a navel piercing, all you really need to do is make sure you don't wear crop tops at work or school. Just save those crop tops for days you're not somewhere you're not allowed your piercing, and then you can show it off to the world. One thing you do need to be aware of is physical activity. So, for example, I got my navel piercing in school, and I think a couple weeks later we started doing trampolining in PE, and obviously that was a little bit of a risk. I put a plaster on mine to keep it safe, but in reality trampolining is still a bit of a heavy duty activity to be doing when you've got a healing navel piercing, because you're flipping around, you might be belly flopping and all of that kind of stuff, and you just don't want to put added pressure on the piercing with both your movements and any contact during the activity. The next piercing I have on my list is a tongue piercing, because believe it or not, although you think a tongue piercing is going to be really visible, it's actually not that visible when you talk. I notice mine sometimes because it is quite far forward, but in general, if you have your tongue piercing placed a little bit further back, then you won't really be able to see it when you talk. Unfortunately, the way my veins are, I had to have mine a little further forward, so I do see it sometimes, but for most people it's not that noticeable. However, one thing you need to note is that this piercing might be noticeable during the healing process. For example, you might talk a little bit different in the first few days of having your piercing, your bar will be a lot longer and therefore more noticeable, and you'll obviously have a bit more trouble eating and stuff like that, so that might be when people start to notice you've got it. So if you are going to get this piercing and you're not allowed it at work or school, I suggest getting it either right before a long weekend so that you can at least get your eating and speech sorted before you return, or you know, when you've got some time off, either in a school holiday or just like your general work holiday. Like, it would be nice if you could downsize your bar before going back, and that usually takes about 2 weeks. Although tongue piercings aren't generally visible when you're talking, if you are still worried, you can put a clear ball on the top, and hopefully then that will be a lot less noticeable, and it will kind of give you peace of mind that no, people probably can't see it because it's not like a big metal ball that stands out against everything. It's not shiny, it's just a clear ball and it's very subtle. The next piercing I have on my list is actually more of a group of piercings, and it does depend on your situation, but what I was thinking of was ear piercing. If you have long and relatively thick hair and you're allowed and able to consistently have it down, wherever you are, whether that's work or school. Obviously with school, be aware of like PE and science experiments, where I know I had to put my hair up, so it's probably not something you can do if your school's quite strict. But if you can have your hair down consistently, then ear piercing shouldn't be a problem, because you shouldn't be able to see them. Just obviously be careful if you're healing anything that your hair doesn't catch on it, and make sure your hair is nice and clean so it's not transferring anything. I've used my hair on numerous occasions to hide my ear piercings, especially in things like job interviews before I was a body piercer and stuff like that, and I found it's a great way to minimize the appearance of how many piercings I have. So if you're able to have your hair down, I'd definitely suggest some nice ear piercings for you. The next piercing I have on my list of piercings is actually another group, and these are strictly 18 plus, preferably a bit older, as you want to make sure you're fully developed before getting any of these areas pierced. But this group is intimate piercings. So with intimate piercings, I'm basically including genital piercings and nipple piercings and anything else in that sort of area. As I said, make sure you're 18 plus and fully developed before you get these done, but they are great piercings to have that you can hide. These piercings can also give you an added sense of confidence and pleasure, which can be quite nice, especially if sort of no one knows about them, because it's just like your little private boost in life. So that is my list of piercings that you can hide at work and school, but I do want to touch quickly on something you can do to hide other piercings and just share my thoughts on it, and that is wearing piercing retainers. Personally, I don't really use piercing retainers. Even when I used to work an office job, I never really used them, but my office was quite relaxed. Even for job interviews in stricter places, I've personally not used them, as I find that retainers are often quite flimsy and they can be hard to get in because, you know, they bend as you try and push them through the hole, and they can also fall out quite easily, as many of them have a disc rather than a ball to secure them. However, you can get ones with a ball, but even then I don't feel like they're super secure. Like, it's quite easy for the balls to fall off in my experience. And also I find retainers in general to be more obvious than the actual piercing jewelry, because it's kind of like you can see something but you're not sure what it is, so people look closer, and I just personally think it's more obvious. That's how I feel. However, most companies will still like ask you to wear them anyway, so you know, that's their choice. If you don't want to have to do that, then find another company to work for. So definitely bear your career and workplace in mind when you're getting piercings, and also be prepared to take them out if your career is what you want to do and that career doesn't allow you to have them. Another thing with piercing retainers is you can only really use them when your piercing is healed, and that can take months and months and months. So they're not really great for anyone who's literally just got a piercing and then realise their workplace isn't fine with it and they need to put a retainer in, because you generally do need a healed piercing to use them. Also, I know a lot of people put retainers in their piercing and then swap back to their normal jewellery when they're home from work, and that's fair enough, but unless your piercing is really healed, swapping your jewellery this often might irritate it. So that's another thing that you need to be careful of if you are using body piercing retainers. But that is basically all I had to say. So those are 5 piercings you can get if you need to hide them at work or school, and also my thoughts on piercing retainers and their usage. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
As a thank you for watching, I'm giving you 10% off at wholeheartedlondon.com, so be sure to head over there and add anything you fancy to your basket, and then enter the code YouTube at the checkout to claim your 10% off.